All right, welcome back everyone to another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at a really interesting source.
Okay.
It's all about prayer
Mm.
and Jesus and how he used prayer in his ministry. And specifically, we're going to be looking at a source that talks about him taking his disciples up on a mountain to pray
Okay.
and how they ended up falling asleep while he's praying,
Oh, wow.
which is pretty interesting.
It's interesting.
So to kind of set the scene here, we're talking about Peter, James, and John, three of Jesus' closest disciples.
Oh,
And he takes them up this mountainside
yeah.
at night
Mm.
to pray.
Yeah.
And the source actually describes Jesus praying with vehement cries and tears,
Oh.
which is a really powerful image.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, well, what was going on? What was he facing to have that level of intensity in his prayer life at that point?
It's a really almost a visceral image,
Yeah.
like what kind of weight was on his shoulders
Yeah.
to cause that kind of emotional outpouring.
Absolutely. And, that kind of makes me think about, like, just our own experiences with prayer. Have you ever felt that desperate need for strength or support where you've just had to pour your heart out like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all have those moments in life
Yeah.
where you just feel like you need something bigger than yourself to lean on.
Yeah.
So kind of back to the story. We've got Jesus, in deep, heartfelt prayer.
Mm-hmm.
The disciples are there with him, and then they fall asleep.
They fall asleep.
They fall asleep.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, you would think that witnessing something like that
Mm-hmm.
would keep you awake.
Right.
I mean, I guess they were tired.
Well, yeah, I mean, some scholars suggest they were just exhausted. They've been traveling with him for quite a while at that point, and they were probably physically just spent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
But it's interesting to think about, the contrast between Jesus's intense emotional state
Mm.
and then his disciples just kind of snoozing away.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost comical, but there's also that deeper layer to it, right? Like, are we really present in the moments that matter, even when those moments are maybe awe-inspiring or significant?
Right? Are we just kind of going through the motions sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and missing the bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
So while they're sleeping, what is Jesus actually praying for?
That's a good question. The source tells us he's praying for his own strength, but he's also praying for his disciples. He's praying that their faith will remain strong in the face of all the challenges that are coming their way.
Wow, that's really powerful. So he's not just thinking about himself in this moment. He's thinking about the people he's leading.
Exactly. It's a beautiful picture of leadership, isn't it? To be carrying not only your own burdens, but also thinking about the needs of those that you're responsible for.
It's inspiring. So we've got Jesus praying, disciples sleeping. What happens next?
So, according to the source, there's this incredible response to his prayer. The heavens open up and this brilliant light descends, enveloping him. And his appearance actually becomes radiant.
Whoa, okay, so
Yeah.
this is a pretty dramatic moment.
It's a moment of spiritual breakthrough, a visible manifestation of his connection to the divine.
So what does all of this whole event tell us about prayer?
I think it points to a couple of important things. First, the power of persistence in prayer. Jesus wasn't just casually mentioning his worries. He was pouring his heart out. And that raw honesty seems to have opened the door for a really profound experience.
So it's not just about like saying a quick prayer before dinner. It's about really like wrestling with things
Yeah,
and being honest
Ah.
with yourself and with whatever higher power you believe in.
absolutely.
And the second thing I think this shows us is that there's a potential for these moments of spiritual breakthrough. These times when we feel a tangible connection to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's really important because it reminds us that even though we may not always see dramatic answers to our prayers, that doesn't mean that prayer isn't a source of strength and guidance.
Right. It's about cultivating that relationship over time. I'm also struck by something the source mentions, that Jesus was actually praying that his disciples might witness a manifestation of his divinity, something that would strengthen their faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes me wonder, if we could ask for one sign to strengthen our own faith, what would it be? What would it take for us to really believe?
It's a great question to think about, and maybe something for all of us to reflect on as we continue our own journeys of faith.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.